Okay, time for yin. We'll start today using the bolster, which we've talked about this before. You don't have to have a yoga bolster, just anything around this size. Could be a pillow, stacked folded towels or blankets also works. You'll bring the bolster to the wide way in front of you, about the center of the mat if you're using one. Then you'll come forward to hands and knees, hands in front of the bolster and knees behind the bolster. And then you'll start to walk the hands forward. You're going to set the hips on top of the bolster. Make sure your stomach is not on the bolster. It's ahead of the bolster. And then you can start to set the chest down onto the mat. Tops of the feet can rest down on the mat, and you can just let the ankles roll out. Keep everything nice and relaxed. Stack the hands one on top of the other and rest the forehead down on top of the hands. And that should give you enough space for the nose, so the nose isn't touching down on the ground. If it doesn't work, you could also make fists with the hands, one on top of the other, and that's a higher resting point, and this can feel good too. So those are two options. And if for whatever reason it doesn't feel good on the neck, you can turn the head to one side. But see if you can do the forehead straight down. And as you close the eyes, feeling the hips lift, you're in a back bend. It's a light one. The bolster's lifting the hips. You're feeling that arch in the lower back. Chest is going forward as it rests on the mat. And maybe you feel some length on the top of the hips as the legs go back. Begin to deepen your breath, taking a deeper inhale in through the nose, back out through the nose, nice and slow. Deep inhale in through the nose, maybe a little longer than the first one. See if you can match the length of the exhale to that inhale. One more time, long breath in through the nose and back out through the nose. Keep going on your own. Feeling the difference now that you've engaged your breath, not allowing the body to breathe on its own, but bringing more attention to it. How has that changed the experience of the pose? Let's start to lift the head up, bring the hands to the mat, and you'll come back to hands and knees just so you can move the bolster forward. So bring the bolster forward. You're going to come back to lying down, but bring the forearms down to the mat, elbows in front of the bolster. And this time, legs go back. So pubic bones down on the mat, tops of the feet can rest down on the mat. You can let the ankles roll out. reach the chest forward. And now we're taking the back bend into a different one, Sphinx pose. But you have the support of the bolster underneath you to keep the chest lifted. Then back of the neck stays long, close the eyes. Stay with the same breath we started with. And feel the difference between moving the bolster forward and where it was before. You'll start to blink open the eyes. You're coming back up to hands and knees. You don't have to come all the way up, just enough to move the bolster off to the side, and you'll come back to lying down on your stomach. This time, bring the hands so that they face the sides of the mat and one forearm is in front of the other. And then walk the forearms back so that the chin is ahead of the forearms. You don't want the chin to be behind the forearms or in line. And then start to move the hands away from one another, coming into a shoulder opening. So upper back, shoulder area. And some of you might keep the head lifted. You could use a block underneath the forehead. Some of you can let the head come down and the chin can hook over that top arm. We're all going to be very different with how this shape feels in our bodies. So explore it a little bit, stay away from your edge. Keep it soft. You could also use the bolster if you're down low enough as a pillow for the forehead. And start to lift the head up. You'll slowly bring the elbows back in. So one forearm's in front of the other, just switch it. So walk the forearms back, bring the other forearm in front. And once you have that, make sure the chin is ahead of the forearms as best you can. And then start to move the arms away from one another, coming back in. So the head might not go down as low, or maybe it goes down lower. It might not be in the same place. That's okay. Just keep it gentle. Leave some room in the pose so you have something to explore as the time goes on. As you stay with that same breath we started with, moving the breath throughout the body, maybe focusing on the space across the shoulder blades or the outer upper arms. Whole areas being targeted and could use some extra breath. And we'll lift the head back up, walk the elbows back in, and turn the hands to face forward. If you have anything in front of you, you can just set it off to the side. Now you are coming up to hands and knees. So walk the hands back, push yourself up to hands and knees. Big toes together, knees apart. You're coming into child's pose. So hips go back. You could take a bolster and put it behind the knees if you want more space for the knees. It looks like this if you're wondering. You just wedge it behind the knees, the hips sit back, arms reach forward, forehead comes down. And that can be a nice way to let your hips rest down on something. If you don't need it, skip it. So there's still a bit of a back bend with the arms reaching forward, but the shoulders are open or more open. Now you're getting that bend in the legs, hips reaching back, starting to involve the lower body a little bit more in the last couple of poses. You'll start to lift the head, shift forward onto hands and knees, coming to tabletop. And let's do a few rounds of cat-cow breath. So some movement. On the inhale, reach the heart forward, lift the tail. On the exhale, slowly round the spine. We haven't done this yet. Inhale, heart comes forward. This feels familiar. We've done a lot of back bending. Then exhale, slowly round, hug the belly in for support on that lower back. Keep going, stay around this pace, slow and controlled, being gentle with the rounding of the spine. And you'll make your way back to a neutral spine. Finish the cycle that you're on if you still have an inhale or an exhale. Then you'll bring the feet over to one side, come to seated on the mat, legs out in front of you. And you'll want to strap for this next one. So come down onto your back and take the strap, loop it around the sole of the right foot, heads resting down on the mat. Both ends are being held of the strap are being held with the hands. And then you can slide the hands all the way back until the elbows rest down on the mat. So foot is heel pointing up, toes coming down toward the face. You feel that length in the back side of the leg, but you could have a bend in the knee. So you can play with that and see how that feels in your body. Chest is nice and open. You can close the eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. And then with the eyes closed, you can feel your way into it a little bit more. Maybe the foot comes in a little bit closer, but you're not going anywhere near your edge. Keep it easy. Sole the left foot we're keeping on the mat for now. You'll have an option to extend it. But this is our first thing we've done with the legs, so we just want to take our time going deeper into the pose. And if you'd like, you could extend that left leg forward, heel rests down on the mat. If it's too much, especially for the lower back, then slide that left foot back in and keep it down on the mat. You'll start to grab both ends of the strap with the left hand. Right arm, just reach it out to the side. So right hand in line with the shoulder. That way you keep the right shoulder on the mat. So listen carefully. Right foot's over the hip. You're going to bring the right foot over to the left, maybe a couple of inches, maybe a foot, but no more than that, just until you start to feel the outer edge of the right leg. And if you don't feel anything by that small movement, then the foot could come in a little closer, but we're not coming into a twist. Right shoulder, right hip, stay down evenly on the ground. They're not rolling all the way over to the left. And you can slide the hand back so that that left elbow rests down on the mat. Eyes can close. And you'll blink open the eyes if they're closed. Bring the right foot back to center. Set the strap off to the side. Hug the right knee in toward the chest. Bring the other knee in too. So both knees in toward the chest. Set the feet down onto the mat. Scoot the hips over to the right. Bring the knees over to the left. So you're coming into a reclined twist. Right arm can reach back behind you. You could bring both arms out wide in a T shape, or you can even cactus the arms. That puts a different weight on the shoulders. So you can see which one feels better. And then from here, the legs can stay bent the way that they are. You might want to extend the legs, straightening them. You're still in the twist, and you're not pressing out through the feet. Once you get them straight, let them relax. Then maybe the head starts to fall over to the right. So that's why we did that last pose with the strap, with the foot going over to the side just a little bit, so that this one, we can explore a deeper version of the twist, but have the body ready for it. And if at any point it bothers you to have the legs straighter, come back to bent knees. And you can also put something between the knees if you're struggling at all, a block or a bolster. And that brings more space to the lower back. And you'll start to bend the legs if the legs are straighter. Make your way onto your back again, using the feet to get there. And you'll take the strap, loop the sole of the left foot into the strap. Keep the right foot on the mat for now. And you're placing the strap at the top of the arch, just below the ball of the foot. Slide the hands all the way back if the strap is long enough, so that you can rest the elbows on the mat. Figure out if you need a bend in the knee, how much of one, and lengthen the backside of the leg by bringing the toes down toward the face. So reversing the blood flow in each leg one at a time when we bring the foot up. Just such a great thing for us to do for the way that we live our lives. We always have the feet underneath us. So reversing that blood flow is nice to do on a regular basis. And if you did it on the first side, you could extend that right leg forward, resting the heel down on the mat. See how it feels on this side. If it doesn't feel good and it felt good on the other side, don't feel like it's fine to bring that foot back in, even if that's not what you did on the first side. Just listening to your body and getting better at listening to your body. We're constantly getting information and feedback from our body. We need to listen to those messages and respond to them. And the sooner we can hear those messages, the better we can take care of ourselves. We don't want to wait for the body to start screaming or shouting at us. And both ends of the strap will come into the right hand. You'll bring that left arm out to the side. Slide the hand back so that you can rest the right elbow on the mat. Maybe bring the foot in a little closer toward the body first, and then let the left foot come over to the right. Just a few inches, no more than a foot. We want to keep that left hip down on the mat and the left shoulder heavy on the mat. So if you start going over to the right and you're not feeling anything, then just keep bringing that left foot forward in toward the face. And remember, gentle sensation, not all the way in with these longer holds. Once you find it, close the eyes. That intensity will start to build over time. And bring that left foot back to center. Set the strap off to the side. Hug the left knee in toward the chest. Bring the right knee in toward the chest. Set the feet down onto the mat. Use the feet to scoot the hips over to the left. Knees come over to the right. Left arm reaches back behind you. You could have the arms in a T shape, the arms just extended, or bending at the elbows. And you're in the twist here. See how it feels on this side before we change anything with the legs. Maybe both shoulders are closer to being on the mat. And then if you'd like, you can explore extending the legs forward, coming into straighter legs, but keep them relaxed. You're not pressing out through the feet. Once you get there, soften it up. Maybe there's a bend in the knees, but your legs are much straighter than they typically would be. Still feeling the outer edge of that left leg. Closing the eyes. Maybe the head starts to roll over to the left. It doesn't have to. Only if the neck likes that. And start to bend the knees, bring the head back to center if you turned it to the left. And you'll use the feet to find center on your back. And from here, bring the knees in so you can place a hand on each knee, and then you'll just move the knees around in a circle, keeping the knees and the feet together, releasing that twist. And switch the direction, go the other way. And set the feet down onto the mat. Roll over to one side to come up to seated. So take your time, use the hands to help you bring yourself up to seated. So we'll come forward again to hands and knees. Have a bolster, a block, blanket if you have one nearby. Just because they're all different heights, you'll probably want to use one of them. Now, as you come to tabletop, having your props near the sides of the mat, you'll bring the knees all the way together and you'll separate the feet just about hip, a little wider than hip width distance. Take the calf muscle and move it off to the side, and you're bringing the hips down between the feet. So here's where you'll probably want something. If the hips don't sit all the way down to the mat, then you need to bridge this gap with something. So it could be a blanket, a bolster, a block, 2 blocks. You're trying to fill in that space so that when you sit down, you're completely supported with the hips. I tried a blanket, it's too low. I'm going to try a bolster. Slide it there and see how that is. Oh yeah, that's going to do it. So tops of the feet are down, outer ankles hug in. And we rest the hands just on the thighs to start. Let's get the legs used to this shape, the hips used to this. Chest can be lifted, close the eyes. And you can either have the palms resting down on the thighs, or you can turn the palms to face up. You can even stack one hand on top of the other. And an image to think of is almost like creating a cup. So a cup for receiving whatever it is you need. Palms down is soothing too. So just see which one you prefer. Come back to your breath. And if at any point you need to lift the hips up higher, do that. This is saddle pose. It is a nice way to open up the feet, the ankles, the knees, but not great if you've had any kind of trauma in those areas. If you're feeling some pain, then back out of it. You can always come to seated. And it's also a way to open up the hips. So you'll blink open the eyes. We'll get into the hands a little bit. So take this left hand. You can point back like you're pointing to someone behind you. Take the right hand onto the 4 fingers, and you can start to put some weight on that hand, getting into the wrist, forearm. Try not to go too far, just to a place where you feel a nice opening. Thumb is free on that left hand. You'll slowly start to release, grab that thumb, maybe with just a finger or two. And you're doing the same thing, but just with the thumb. So you don't need to grab with all 4 fingers. That might be too much. And switching sides. So take the right hand, point the fingers back, take the left four fingers on top of the right four fingers and start to press back, opening up the right wrist, right forearm, and the hand. Deep inhales in and out through the nose. And start to release. Come to that thumb. Maybe you cut just a couple of fingers. Don't feel like you need to do the same amount. Finding that right amount of pressure in your body to facilitate a healthy stretch. And start to release. Shake out the hands and the wrists. So let the hands just be totally relaxed, shaking out the wrists. And then you can make fists with the hands as tight as you can, and then open up the hands as wide as you can. And do that a few times, going slow. One more time, squeeze the fist as tight as you can, and then open up the hands as wide as you can. And you'll come forward to hands and knees. So that was definitely a longer hold than we typically do. If you have anything underneath you, set it off to the side. And then bring the feet over to one side, bring the feet down to the mat. Hands come back behind you, and we'll take windshield wipers to kind of shake that off. So knees go side to side. You'll come back to center, turn to face the side of the mat. So feet wide, hands still back behind you. And you'll take those windshield wipers again with the feet wide, but see if you can get the knees down closer to the mat. So playing with the reclined deer pose. And then go to the other side, see how it feels on that side. So playing with internal rotation and external rotation at the same time with each leg. Go back over to the other side. Switching sides again. Knees come down. They don't have to touch. You're just reaching for the mat. If they touch, great, but don't feel like you have to force it. And then we're coming back over to that first side. We'll stay here. So knees come down. Just a counter pose. All right, bring the knees back to center, go the other way. Staying here a little bit longer. Keeping the body reclined, the upper body with the hands back behind you. And start to bring the knees back to center. Come forward. So you're keeping the feet down on the mat, knees bent. Maybe you keep the hands back behind you and you just stay here. You could also bring the hands in front of you and start to fold forward. So coming into an external hip opener. Let the head and the neck go. And if you're having a hard time reaching the floor in front of you, blocks are great. You can bring those underneath the hands at whatever height makes the most sense, or you can build them up higher and just rest the forearms down on the blocks. That can feel nice too. So see what's calling. And check out where you can soften. Like if you're clenching the jaw, see if you can release that. And start to lift the head, walk the hands in, bring the hands back behind you again, sitting back in that reclined position. And you might need to bring the feet in a little closer. Take windshield wipers, knees go side to side, which should feel different this time because now we just did an external hip opening and we did an internal. So when you go side to side, they should feel a little bit more even than they did last time we did this. All right, so you'll come back to center, turn to face forward on your mat, legs extended out in front of you. So we'll come to a seated forward fold. Legs are open for this. It should feel really nice, but we haven't done a lot of forward folding outside of the last pose. You could take a bolster on top of the legs if you like that, and then maybe a block on top of that to rest the forehead at whatever height works for you. You can skip the props altogether with this one too. So it's totally up to you. If you have a strap, you could also skip all of this and loop the soles of the feet with the strap. This is great if you have any lower back stuff and forward folds don't work for you. You can still get that opening in the legs, keeping the chest upright, and just stay here with the eyes closed. If you're okay with folding forward, come into it. Start to let the head and the neck go, round the spine. Palms can face up. But having the hands rest down on something. So if they don't touch the ground, find something to put underneath the hands to rest. And we'll start to bring the head back up. You can bring the hands to the blocks or whatever you have in front of you. Set the props off to this. Whatever you have, if you have a bolster or a blanket in front of you, bring that back as a pillow for Shavasana toward the back of the mat. Blanket works too. An actual pillow is great. Blocks, if you have them, will come in front of you and you'll bring the blocks together on the lowest height, right at the top of the mat. So they go wide all the way together. And then you'll bring the heels up on top of the blocks. You'll need to scoot the hips forward because when you lie down, you want to make sure the heels are easily resting on the blocks. And the pillow is really easy to move wherever you need it. Bring the heels a little wider than hip width distance. And now let the toes turn out. So your feet are slightly elevated for this Shavasana. Close the eyes. Palms can face up. When we elevate the feet while we're laying down, it can sometimes help us relax a little quicker, fall into a deeper sleep if we stay long enough. And this is great for power naps. And you'll start to wiggle the fingers and the toes. One foot at a time, bring the feet to the mat. Roll over to your right side, keeping the head on the pillow, eyes stay closed. And use the left hand to bring yourself up to seated, your meditation seat, whatever that looks like. Keep the chest lifted. Take a deep breath in through the nose and back out. Bring the hands together in front of you. Chest stays lifted, but slightly bow the head. Take a moment, honor and acknowledge your heart and spirit, as well as everyone around you. humans, pets, animals, all living things. Bring the head back up, blink open the eyes. Namaste. Thank you. See you guys next time.